Hi, my name is Randy Haycock. I'm an animator at the Walt Disney Animation Studios. I've been at the studios about 28 years. My first film was Aladdin. A little over 10 years ago, I got the opportunity to be the supervising animator of Prince Naveen for Princess and the Frog. So I really enjoyed animating Prince Naveen, and I thought it would be fun to show you how to draw him.
All right, we're going to start by just drawing a few construction lines so we get the basic shapes in there. And we'll start by drawing kind of a football shape. And this football shape we're going to draw very lightly, which is a little different than drawing the circle that you've seen in some of these other videos. We're starting with kind of a football shape that's a little flatter on top than on the bottom. For all my friends down under, it's a rugby ball shape. For everybody else, we'll call it a pointed egg. All right? And then on top of the football, we're going to put a little triangle. The triangle will start right about where the stripes would be if we were drawing a football. And we'll come up from there and go right up to the middle and then down the other side and meet the football on the other side. And again, we're drawing very lightly because we're just drawing kind of construction. This is our foundation to help us to make sure we're going to put everything in proportion. And then from the top of that triangle, we're going to draw a line straight down through the football. And then from the pointy end, one pointy end of the football to the other, we're going to draw a line straight through. Okay? Now we have our basic construction lines that will help us to make sure we're drawing our character in proportion. All right. So we're going to put a little more detail in, but still very lightly because we're not kind of doing finished drawing yet. But I'm going to draw out these brows a little bit. Naveen has these big, heavy brows. I'm going to do a little kind of like a candy cane shape. And so you'll see it curls at the top and then goes straight down to the football, right where the triangle meets the football. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, but a little bit lower. I always like to put a little what we call asymmetry in my drawings, so they're not exactly the same on both sides. So it's like that candy cane's behind this candy cane and just a little bit lower. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is draw him where the eyebrows themselves go. Naveen has big, thick, heavy eyebrows. It was part of his features as they were part of his features as a human, and we wanted to capture a couple of his features as a human in his frog version. And what we decided is let's get the eyebrows in and then his pearly white teeth. So I'm going to do the same thing. I start right here in the middle. It's kind of a little less hooked shape. It goes straight down along the brow and then a little thicker at the top and then gets thinner as it goes down toward the football. Do the same thing on this side. And a little thicker at the top and gets thinner until it comes to a point down at the football. And remember, this one's just a little bit lower, just like the other side. And those are his eyebrows. Now we're going to lay in where his eyeballs are going to go, and they're kind of oval or egg-shaped. And they start up here toward the top of the brow, right about where it gets straight, right? And then they curve down, and at the football they curve back up. So if they were an egg or an oval, we'd see them coming up past his eyebrows. Okay? We'll do the same thing on this side. Okay? I'm going to move this one in just a little bit because I feel like it's just a little too far over to the side. There. Alright. So that's where his eyes are going to go. His nose, he really doesn't have much of a nose, more of just a bump. So that comes in just below the top of the football, and it's a curve, kind of the same, like upside down curve of where his eyeballs would be. Okay. Now, I've decided that I want to have Naveen leaning on his hand, which is kind of a typical pose for Naveen. He liked to lean on his hand because it made him feel confident and cool. So we're going to push this cheek up on this side just a little bit. So the football's down here, we're going to push that up as if something's pushing up against it. And I put a little fold in here, which is kind of trying to make it look fleshy like skin. And I'm going to draw in a little, what looks like kind of a loaf of bread And again, I'm drawing very lightly at first, right? Right here. And that'll be where his hand goes. And from that loaf of bread, I'm going to draw a teardrop shape down here. Pretty fat teardrop. Big fat teardrop shape. And that'll be his upper arm. Okay. So on this side, we're going to draw his cheek in here. Same thing. Maybe just a little higher. And then I'm going to round it off so that it's not quite so pointy as our football. But it's going to meet that football shape as it comes back around. Okay? So those are his cheeks. Now, inside his cheeks, he's got this fold where the mouth comes to. And it's pushed up here by his hand. And it's going to go just below, just a little bit below the center line that we drew across here for the football. And then we'll draw another little cheek fold on that side. Okay? So now we have the top of his mouth. I'm going to draw the bottom of his mouth, and it's going to be kind of a crescent moon shape. So it'll be a little thinner on this side because of that hand pushing up. But then as it comes down here, it'll be a little fatter over here and kind of comes up and meets where the top line meets with that cheek fold right there. Okay? Okay, that's about where his mouth's going to go. And Naveen has a chin because, again, he has a nice strong chin as a human, as a handsome prince. We want him to have that nice strong, at least for a frog, as much as possible chin. Okay, so I'm going to draw this cheek down now through his hand. Where's his hand's going to go? And his body comes off of that, right there where that new cheek meets the old football. I'm going to make his body come off and make a little curve there. And I think I'm going to have him leaning on like a leaf. So I'm going to draw kind of the top of that leaf here, and I'm going to make a little S-curvy kind of bottom for that leaf. So I've got kind of a curved teardrop shape, right? But it's pointy on the ends. That's going to be my leaf shape. Now I'm going to draw his other arm in, and his shoulder is going to come off just next to that chin right there, right? And it's kind of pushed up against, and again, kind of a candy cane shape, just like those brows. Something with design is you often kind of try to find certain shape language and design language that's similar. So I've got these candy cane shapes kind of throughout Naveen's design. And his arm comes down, he's going to be leaning on this arm, and that'll be resting on the leaf. So this teardrop shape I made here, I'm going to make another kind of ovally shape for his arm on this side. And then he's got little skinny upper arms. Something when we were researching frogs, I noticed they had big fat forearms, but their arms got really skinny up toward their body. So I give him little skinny forearms, or upper arms and big fat forearms. And then his hand will be down here. I'm going to draw an oval shape, kind of about the same size as my loaf of bread up there. And that'll be where his other hand goes. And his fingers, I'll just make them like a mitten so far. Okay, so now I have my basic underdrawing. And usually at this point, I take my kneaded eraser, which is kind of like a really soft eraser that you can move around. You can see by my kneaded eraser being so dark blue, and I draw with a blue pencil, that I use it a lot. I like having an eraser because I make lots of mistakes and I always want to be able to fix them. So once I have my underdrawing in, this is where I'll go in and I'll kind of rub it all down really lightly so I can still see my lines, but they're much lighter because now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make my final line drawings. And I'll make little adjustments to try to make the drawing a little better as I go. Okay? So just erasing everything down, really lightly rubbing over it with my kneaded eraser. Alright. So here we go. Again, I'll start at the top with the eyes and those brows. Draw them back in. And you'll see now we're going to start adding details. Let me get those eyebrows in. And I'm going to color in, well, I'll wait for doing that. And then his eyes, I want him to have kind of these heavy lids. And they go just past, that heavy lid's going to go just past where his eye shape is. And then I'm going to go from the end of that and meet that eye shape up here. And now I can erase the old eye underneath. And now his eyelid has a little thickness to it, right? Okay, and then he has a pupil, and it's right, kind of right in the middle of that, a little half circle that I'm putting underneath there. And then inside of that, I'll put a full circle right on the outside of that pupil. Okay, now I'm going to go over to this eye and do the same thing. I'm going to draw that eyelid in, and notice my eyelids are a little curved because I want them to feel like they're sitting on a round eyeball. So I give them a little curve, and then from the end of that I go up and meet where my old eyeball was. I can erase my old eyeball drawing, right? And now drawing the bottom good, and a half circle, again, kind of right in the middle, and then a little tiny circle inside there. That's going to be my highlight. I'll come back in and color some stuff in later so it shows up better. And now let's see, I'll draw the other eyebrow in a little better. There we go. And then Naveen has kind of little folds under his eyes. They're kind of like it where his lower eyelids will be. Okay. Get that fold and that cheek in there good. Might bring in that in just a little bit. Okay, that fold there. Now, here comes this other side. Draw that mouth in good, and this cheek in good. Okay, there we go. Alright, now I'm going to draw that lower mouth in. Maybe I'll bring it in just a little bit. Might be getting a little too wide on that side. And I can go ahead, use my eraser, erase that. Now, his next important feature, we talked about his eyebrows being so important, getting those heavy, thick eyebrows that he had as a human. But also, he has these pearly white teeth as a human, and he likes to smile and show them off. So, we thought we'd give him those too. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple little lines on the side, right close to the end, so I make a little triangle. If I color that in black, or dark, you can see it kind of makes his teeth look like he's sitting inside of his mouth. But now I got to draw the teeth themselves. So I'm going to go in just a little bit, and I'm going to draw a little a little curvy V right there. That's kind of his gums. I'll do the same thing over on this side. And then on the bottom, he's got a tooth. And I'm going to start a line right about where that line down meets the bottom of the mouth, and it comes across, but it's a curvy because it's kind of like his eye teeth, you know. If frogs had teeth, human teeth, that's what they look like. And then it goes up a little bit, so like if we were to finish that line, you could see there's a tooth there. But we're not going to draw that line in because we just want it to kind of look like an indication rather than the whole tooth. And then that line's going to go across the mouth but fade out in the middle. And then from this side, I'll come where that line might meet. And notice it follows the same curve as the top of the mouth a little bit, right? And it's going to come out from here with a little up, meeting where that gum is. And I'm going to come out and meet it out there. Okay? Erase some of my construction lines around there. And some of my old underdrawing. Erase that a little better. And now he's got his pearly white teeth. Okay, so let's draw his chin in good. There we go. And now I'm going to work on this hand. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Remember that candy cane shape? It's kind of opposite. It's got a little curve at the top, and then it goes straight, and then we're going to put another little hook on the back of the hand, and then draw a straight line from there. This is going to be his fingers we're drawing in. So that curve kind of curves around there, and another one starts from there and does the same thing, but it doesn't go quite as far as low, and then we put a little hook on the end right there. And then he only has 3 big fingers and a thumb, so we're just going to put one more. Again, not quite as low as that, so it's going to make a line across like that. And then this one comes here. Now his palm will be, that'll curve down there. His palm will be right there. Kind of meets with the finger. I'll put a little fold there so we see the whole finger. And now it kind of looks like a hand. Now I'm going to put a little fold underneath his hand because that, again, we want to see they've got those wrinkles in my wrist. I want to see kind of that. And now I'm going to draw that forearm in. I'm going to make my teardrop a little straighter, so that line's just a little bit straighter. And when it gets down to where it's resting on the leaf, I'm going to sharpen that corner and make it a little flatter on the bottom. Okay? I'm just going to draw that much because I got my other hand here I'm going to draw in. And then his body's going to come here. Now one other thing he has is he has these different color separations on his body. So his chin and his belly are a little lighter than the rest of him. So I'm going to go ahead and draw those color separations in, which is a line that's just going to run parallel to where his body is. And then his arm, his upper arm, I'll see just a little bit of it right there. Okay, so on this side, same thing, comes off, that color separation comes right off of that fold, curves down along with that cheek, tapers in a little bit, gets a little closer to the cheek, and then it's going to curve the other way, kind of to be parallel with this side. Okay, now his shoulder, we'll draw back in. Again, it's that candy cane shape on top, kind of shoulder pushing up against his cheek, and then it goes straight down to his elbow. And then there's a little kind of a sharp, not pointy, but a little sharp turn as it goes to his forearm. And then we'll draw that. It gets a little bit thicker as it gets down to his forearm, and I'm going to put a little fold up there at the top. Okay, so now drawing his other forearm, I'm going to make it a little curvier, kind of like an S curve on top where it meets the hand. On the bottom it's going to be a simpler, just a single curve, but not quite as curvy. Notice how this one's just a little curvier, right? This one's a little flatter because again, like this one, where it's resting, we want to feel that flesh is pushed up against the arm where it's resting on the leaf. The back of your hand, if you notice, the bottom of my hand is really fleshy with a lot of palm, but the top is a little straighter because the bones are closer to the skin. So we're going to draw the top of his skin, or top of his hand, a little straighter down to the first knuckle, and it'll hook there just like that candy cane shape. There it is again. And then the bottom, we're going to make it soft, a soft curve, right? Because it's that palm. Now we're going to draw the fingers. And the fingers are like frog fingers. Naveen doesn't have like bony knuckles or anything, so they kind of curve off of that, and then they got big fat ends. So this big fat end turns up a little bit, and we try to kind of make them look like frog fingers. And the next one kind of comes up, straight up from that. I might put a little knuckle up top to kind of match that knuckle up there. A little knuckle up top right there. Okay. And I erase some of my construction lines, make sure it's still looking good. Erase where my leaf is drawn through. Okay, and now finish drawing that finger, and then the last finger. And he's got really big hands. You notice that? Really big hands, right? Okay, so nice curves on his hands as he's resting them on the leaf. All right. So now I'll go ahead and draw the leaf in. It comes off here where I drew it light. I'll just draw it a little darker, down to a little stem here. And then this side, I'm going to draw that in a little darker. I've got the hardest part done, which is drawing Naveen. Wasn't too hard, was it? And then it's got the vein down the middle of the leaf. And it goes there. And then it's got a couple of little veins kind of flying off of that. Right, and maybe a little vein flying off of that. Right, now it looks like a leaf. Okay. Last thing I'm going to do is going to color in some places. So I already colored in the corners of the mouth to look nice and dark. Might color in the gums just a little bit, really lightly. We want those eyebrows to be colored in so they show really good. Right? Color them in nice and dark. Right? Color this one in nice and dark so it shows up really good. There we go. Okay. And now his pupils, same thing. We're going to color those in nice and dark, but we're leaving that little circle that we drew inside the pupil white so we see that highlight. Right? Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to shade in his eyelids really lightly. And it just helps his eyes kind of stand out a little more, right? If I shade in those eyes just a little bit, then those eyes really stand out. All right. Erase a few more construction lines that I see around. Leftover lines from the under drawing, and we're just about finished. And there we go. There's Prince Naveen. Now the last thing you want to do, they always tell you, very important, so everybody knows who did the drawing, is to sign your name. And that's how I sign mine.
Thank you for tuning in and drawing Naveen with me. I hope you had fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.